Welcome to the Carleena Show, where ordinary people share their hero's journey. I'm your host, Carleena Angwin, and this is episode 12 of the podcast. Today on the show, we have Max Baldwin from Sydney, Australia. In the late 1920s, when Max was just a baby, he was diagnosed with polio and lost use of one leg. But he didn't let polio define him. By his mid-20s, he went on to represent Australia in the Olympic Games. He made history as the first disabled person to compete on an Australian Olympic team. I met Max through his son, Matt Baldwin, who sits down with me at the end of the episode to talk about the significance of sharing each other's stories. Matt is the host of Reading Between the Ink, a podcast that delves into the personal stories and meaning behind people's tattoos. I'll link to Matt's podcast and news articles about his father, Max, in the show notes on my website, carleena.net. That's CARLEENA.net. If you are watching our Skype conversation on YouTube, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. You can help support the show by telling your friends about it and rating and reviewing on iTunes. If you love an episode, reach out to me and let me know. There's nothing more I love than hearing from listeners. Ask my mom or Debbie or Tom. And one more thing. Thank you, Stephen Lorca, for video editing and graphic design. Now I bring you Max Baldwin.
Now, are you comfy there?
Yeah, everything's right.
You sure know? The sound level is good.
Yeah.
So you just talk normally. Say hello.
Hello.
Well, hello there. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Yeah, me too. These new apparatuses with it's amazing. So good to speak to someone direct, isn't it?
It is. It is.
Yeah.
And I just told my niece, I have a niece who's 10, and I just told her, I said, I'm going to talk to someone in Australia, and it's Sunday for them and Saturday for us. And so she just thought that was so cool that we could have a conversation and look at each other and be half a world away. So
Yes, gone are the days of 100 years ago when it took months for just a letter to arrive.
Right. Yeah. So does the audio sound okay? Is my voice?
Yeah.
It is okay.
Yeah.
Audio okay?
I can hear you clearly. Yes.
Is audio okay on your end?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm recording here at this point in time. It's just audio, so that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, and everything's on. So if you guys can take off, I'll be in the background somewhere, but I'll just get some water as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. How can I help you?
Well, hello there.
Yeah.
I'm really honored to have you to sit down across from you and hear your story. Matt's told me a little bit about you, so
I hope he didn't exaggerate.
well, I think he just he wrote a few things that I'm going to ask you about. I hope that's okay.
Okay, you ask me and I'll try and answer them.
Okay, sounds good. Well, so why don't you bring me back to tell me about what you remember from your childhood, what your first memories are.
Let me think. Well, I lived in a country town up on the north coast of New South Wales, a place called Baldwin, and I lived there. Would you believe? We were in the Depression years, and my early memory, I lived in a tent on the banks of a canal.
Wow.
With and that's my first memories. I can't remember much about when I was stricken with polio. That was when I was a year and 8 months old.
Okay.
So my first impressions was when I was about 3, and then from then on was when I had to go from Baldwin to Sydney to see if they could cure this polio. But
okay. So when you were living in a tent, how old were you?
3.
You were 3. Okay. And did you have any siblings or?
Yeah, I had 2 brothers and a sister.
Okay. Are you the youngest?
I am the second eldest.
The second eldest.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there was only about a year between all of them, you know.
Okay. And what did your parents do for a living?
My dad was a cook and in the season for cane gangs. You understand what a cane gang is?
No.
Sugar cane.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
They used to cut these canes, and it used to be done manually. And there'd be gangs of maybe a dozen, and he was the cook, and he used to cook all their meals for them, you know. Yeah.
And then what about your mom?
No, she looked after us. Yeah.
And so it was you, and you said you had 3. You were the second eldest.
Yeah, and then 2 below me.
Okay.
Yeah. When I say 3, I'll be closer to 4. You know what I mean, at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you were how old? You were 18 months when you...
A year and 6 months when I got polio, yeah.
When you got polio. Do you remember anything from that time?
No.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then how old? You said that you moved to Sydney after?
Well, I went to Sydney, to the Children's Hospital in Sydney, and I was there for 3 months, and it was a very miserable time.
Tell me about that. What do you remember?
Well, when you're only a small child, we'll say 3, 4, and when you are taken with your father, something like 500 miles, whatever it was, from where I lived up in Baldwin, and then when you... I can still see my dad today. He was admitted into this ward where there was about 6 other beds with all these little kids in it, children in it, and then I can still see him. He walked to the end of the ward, turned around, gave me a wave, and there I was for 3 months. And when you've been taken from your parents and placed in a hospital ward, and everything was, those days was white nurses in white, everything was white, and being a small child like that was a very, very miserable time, I can assure you. You know.
Yeah.
But anyway, nothing could be done, and I went back home. And then the next time I went to Sydney was to see a Sister Kenny. Have you ever heard of her?
No.
She was, the Americans know a lot about her. They took her over there, and she had some ways of treating poliomyelitis, which was called infantile paralysis in those days. And she had a look at my leg and said, "Bad luck." Oh, didn't say that, but nothing could be done. So that was my worst experience as a small child.
And you were 3 or 4 when that happened?
When I saw her, I would have been possibly 5. Yeah.
Okay,
at the time.
So the time that you were left in the hospital for 3 months, that was when you were 3 or 4?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the next trip was when I came down to see the Sister Kenny, and they have made the Americans made a film about her.
Oh.
And she was welcomed in America in those years. You know.
What was her name again? What was her name? Her name?
Sister Kenny.
Sister
Kenny.
Kenny. Okay, Kenny. I'll look her up. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And so when you went to the hospital the first time, were you able to walk on your other leg at that point, or
never? No. Oh, what I used to do in those days, it was the same length in those days, and I used to put my hand on my knee and lock the knee out, and then I used to sort of bend over and just hobble around. Very, very difficult.
Did you have a crutch?
No. At that time, I had my legs in calipers, metal gadgets, And then when I saw Sister Kenny, she suggested I get these crutches that I wear today. That design.
Oh, okay, so she suggested that you start using the crutches, and is that when you started using them and walking with the one leg? Okay.
Yeah.
And before that, you hadn't been able to walk, or?
I used to hobble around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so your siblings were gymnasts?
No.
Or acrobats?
We didn't. I didn't get involved in sport until I was about 17, 18.
Okay. So we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a second. So let's go back to your childhood. So, so you were 5 when you met Sister Kenny, and so what other memories do you have of those early years of your childhood?
Well, school was about 3 miles away. We lived out when we moved out of a tent which was blown down by a storm. We moved into an old wooden house, and it was about 3 miles from the town, from school. And so I didn't attend school until I was 7 years of age. So it was rather hard, because when you're 7 and you go to school and children around you are 5 years of age, you were the big boy of the class, and it didn't mean that you were that smart just because you were a big boy.
And so did you have to walk to school 3 miles?
No, what happened, eventually I used to be carried from my house to a road where a bus used to go down, and that was about half a mile, 3/4 of a mile, and my parents used to carry me, my mother used to carry me down there, put me on the bus. I'd go to school, and then when I got back to the drop-off spot, I'd get off there, and sometimes there was a big cattle yard there, and they used to sell cattle. And of course, from there to my place and past my place where the cattle road was, sometimes a drover on a horse would pick me up, and I would sit on the back of the horse, and he'd give me a lift home. But that used to happen. Yeah.
And so when the bus took you to school, was there someone there waiting to help you get off the bus?
Not really.
How did you manage that?
I used to hop out. When you got a disability, you learn to look after yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so tell me more about what you remember of your early years up until you started gymnastics with your siblings.
Well, sport in those days for disabled people was non-existent, and at school, most of the time I'd be a marker or something like that, but never a participant in sport, because you had a disability, you didn't compete, So
what do you mean by a marker?
Well, when you score, you're going to check the runners as they come over the line, or or when they're playing cricket, putting the scores down, or things like that. Yeah, but nothing physical. You understand?
Right.
Nothing. Yeah.
And how did that affect you?
It was disappointing. Excuse me, disappointing, because everyone likes to be in the group. Yourself, you don't like to be on the outside, and so schooling was not a very happy place. Not a very happy place. And when you got a disability there too, you get bullied. And my earliest remembrance of that was I'd be in the yard and a kid would come up behind you and push you over and things like that, But you got revenge because when a lot of boys are playing in a schoolyard, after been running around for a while, they need a drink of water, don't they? So you waited around where the tap was, And when they came, then you grabbed them and you got your revenge. You give them a whack in the ear, you know. But
Yeah.
there's always ways to you get, you know.
Yeah. Were there any other students or teachers who were an ally to you, who helped you out, or?
One teacher was very good. I mean, they used to call me, my nickname in those days was Yamstick Hoppy. Now, Yamstick is a Aboriginal name,
Oh,
and
okay.
Hoppy, and so they used to call me Yamstick Hoppy.
Uh-huh.
And that stuck with me all my school years, you know. It was
Right.
Hoppy or Yamstick Hoppy, you know. And some of the teachers, one teacher in particular said, the next time I hear someone call Baldwin Yamstick Hoppy, he gets 4. And after some of the kids got 4 canes, 4 whacks of the cane, you understand?
Oh, 4K. Okay. Uh-huh. Yeah.
4. They stopped calling me Yamstick Hoppy. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but when I look back, who cares, you know?
Right.
That was life. That was life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
And so how long had your siblings been doing gymnastics at this point?
Oh, they didn't start doing that until my sister was a very good dancer, a national dancer, you know, the Highland Fling and the Scottish dances and all those sort of things. And she was very good. And then when we moved to Sydney, when I was about 14, we moved to Sydney, and then she went to these acrobatic classes, and she became a very good acrobat, and my brother too, professional acrobats. And they enticed me there to go up to their the gym where they used to do all their practice, and that's where I got involved, you know, in gymnastics, and that led to other sports as well. So, but
so this was your older sister and your younger brother?
no, my sister was the youngest in the family.
Okay, so it was the
And
younger sister.
and my brother was next to me, below me. It was my brother below me and my sister, and they were professional acrobats.
Oh, okay. They're both younger than you, and so they encouraged you to go to the gymnasium with them. Okay, and so when you went with them the first few times, did you think that you were going to do gymnastics too, or did you just kind of go to watch and then they encouraged you, or how did that work?
Oh, I just went there and I could see that what they were doing, and some of them were things they were doing, like hand balancing and all that sort of thing. And I thought I'd give it a go, and I used to strap my leg together, and so that the bad one didn't fall out of the, you know. And then I just got better and better and better until I found out that a lot of the things I was doing was much better than a lot of the people there, you know. And so I. From there, after doing gymnastics, I joined YHA. You know YHA, Youth Hostel Association.
Oh, okay.
It's an international youth hostel where a lot of people travel in the world. And I joined that, and that led me to all the other sports such as canoeing, skiing, and all those sort of things. You know.
And how old were you when you started canoeing?
About 20.
Okay, so you did gymnastics for about since you were 14?
No, I was about 18 when I started gymnastics. Yeah.
Okay.
But in those years from 14 up to 18, I did nothing.
Okay. You just went there to watch, or did you practice gymnastics?
No, I just went there. I just didn't go there then. From 18 to 14, I had my own life, you know, doing nothing. Yeah.
And so what was it that that made you decide that you wanted to try gymnastics?
Well, I mean, why do you want to try? I felt I was reasonably good at it, and so I thought it just was a sport, and so you just pursued it, you know. And of course, as I always say, doors open. You either walk through or you walk past. And if you walk through the door, well, I mean, you get introduced to all sorts of activities and things, you know. Yeah.
And how do you think your your younger brother and younger sister, do you think that they were excited to see you try gymnastics? And
No, I don't. I said I was just one of the mob, I suppose, one of the family. No, there's nothing startling. I mean, they had their own life, their own activities, and where in those days they were professionals, and I was an amateur. That's the big difference in those days in sport.
Okay. Yeah, I looked on, there's an article online with pictures of you from, and they're quite impressive. One hand balancing, holding on someone's head, and that's that's very impressive. And was that in your teens, those pictures?
Yeah, that was when I was in the early 20s,
Okay.
And of course, in those days, I put together a little act with another friend of mine, and we used to do all these amateur shows in all sorts of places, all exhibitions and things. And we became very popular as far as demand for us to do these things. I think the main thing was that when a bloke walks out on crutches and starts doing those things, it sort of opened people's eyes a little bit, because you never saw it in those days.
Right.
If you were a disability, you were classified as a cripple. And that's the way it was. There was nothing for disabled people not like today, when you got Paralympics and all sorts of things. Nothing like that. I'm going back 60 years.
Yeah. And so you started canoeing when you were in your early 20s?
Yep. Yeah.
And what got you into that, or how'd you?
Just at this YHA Youth Hostel, they had a canoe club, and I just did little canoe trips and down the rivers and all that sort of thing. And then they had a carnival every year, and so I went to this carnival and participated in a few races over a couple of 100 metres and won them quite easily. And of course, from then on, it just accelerated until eventually someone told me that there was canoeing in the Olympics, and so that's where I set my eyes on that.
Yeah. Do you think all of the upper body strength from the gymnastics helped with the canoeing?
Well, a lot that did to a degree, but when you're walking with crutches and you're using your legs, your arms or your legs, you get a lot of development there. See, and so that combined with gymnastics,
Yeah.
Gave a lot of shoulders.
Yeah. And how old were you when you were in the Olympics?
27.
You were at 27.
20. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And had you prepared for the Olympics for a few years before that? Were you planning to go in the Olympics, or how did that work out?
Well, I didn't start thinking about the Olympics until about a year before the Olympics, which were in 1956 in Melbourne, and in Victoria, and so someone said that I found out there was canoeing in the Olympics. Up until then, I was quite ignorant of that, and because of the Australian, we'd never competed in canoeing in the Olympics ever. So we were the first time we've ever put a canoeing team into the Olympics. And so then I just thought, well, that started me off, and from then on, for the next year, it was just hard work, hard work. Because the thing you got to remember is that making the Olympics is 10 times harder than competing in the Olympics.
Is it really?
Well, I mean, you can spend a whole year training, and then you come to the trials, and there's only one race, and you've got to come either first or second in that trial race. And if you just get pipped and only come in third and get beaten by a split second, then the whole year that you've spent training you've lost it. You didn't make it.
Right.
But so making the Olympics is a lot harder than competing in the Olympics, because when you've made the Olympics, you're Olympian and you compete. Well, I mean, you're there to compete, and you know you've made it to the Olympics. You know.
Right.
But making the Olympics is the toughest thing you've ever tried for. You know.
Yeah.
Not easy. When you think of all the sacrifices that you put into it, you know.
Yeah. Can you remember that year and maybe a couple stories of the training?
Well, most of the training, I suppose, it was when I used to drive a taxi cab in the day between 2 o'clock until 12 o'clock, and then I'd get home, and then I'd have a sleep, get up at 7 o'clock, go out to the river, and train there until 11 o'clock, come home, have a shower, have a lunch, and then go and drive a cab again. So that I drove the cabs of a night time so that I could train of a daytime.
And when did you sleep?
Only between 12 o'clock and 7 o'clock every night.
Okay.
Because I used to get home from driving the cab at 12 o'clock, and then I'd be up at 7 out to the river. Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
And then on Saturday, I'd do a double shift on the cab to make enough money to survive. And then on Sunday, I'd do 6 hours on the training. You know.
Okay.
Spread over the day. So as I say, making the Olympics is 10 times harder than competing in the Olympics.
Yeah.
People don't realise that, but it's a tough.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah. So tell me what you remember from the Olympics. Do you remember the opening ceremonies, and just tell me everything you remember?
Oh, well, when you're an Olympian, which in those days was you had to be a true blue amateur. There was no money involved. It cost you a lot of time, cost you a lot of money, and to make it, and then to go to the opening ceremony, which is big deal, and you're marching there representing your country. It's and when you think in my life, being stricken with polio, it never ever entered my mind that I'd ever be an Olympian. I mean, you think about it. If you've got a crook leg, and in those days there was no concessions for people with disabilities. You had to compete with the mob. You had to compete against everyone, so there was no concessions whatsoever.
Yeah.
So when you got polio in those days, or a disability, there was. That's the way it was. It was tough. It was hard going, and you had to be a true blue amateur. So
yeah. And how did people, either other Australians or other people, other competitors, how did they respond to you when they?
In what way?
Well, did anybody say anything because of your disability, or?
There was a few articles written up about me, about how it was, but you were just one of the mob, which was good. Although a lot of people realised that I was the first disabled person in an Australian Olympic team. So that's what they tell me anyway.
Yeah. Wow.
So disabled people didn't get much recognition in those days,
Right, and the Paralympics didn't start until the 60s, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
And now it's a big event now,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So what else do you remember from the Olympics? What other memories stick out in your mind?
just making it, going in the race and doing your best, and that's how it goes, you know. Yeah.
Did you have family there watching you?
Oh yeah, I had my wife and my brother, the youngest one under me, and my father, you know, and that was, they came down and cheered me on, you know.
I'm sure that was a proud moment for them.
I'm sure it was, you know, but and a lot of the to achieve that was through their help, you know. There's no doubt about that, you know. So that's how it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how old were you when you met your wife?
About let me think, 24, I think it was. Yeah, 24. You know. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We had a little child at that time, a little girl. So yeah, yeah.
Okay. So, where did you meet your wife?
At a youth hostel, and a skiing hostel down in a place called Kyandra, where the youth hostel had this hostel there, and you went down there, and it was on the snowfields in Kyandra, which is down near Mount Kosciuszko, and she was there, and for a week, and that's where we met. She was a keen skier, and I'd only just started skiing. It was my second trip there, and yeah, so that's all that happened there.
Okay. So you were a skier too, and did you compete in was it 3-track?
In skiing.
Tell me about that.
Oh, I was, when I first went down there, I'd never been skiing. And so there I was in a snowfield trying to ski and with pushing myself along with my crutches, and it just didn't work. And I was falling over everywhere, and so that's the way it was. And then at the time there was a Frenchman there travelling with the youth hostels, and he said to my friend who was had come from France, he said that about over in Europe, all these blokes with disabilities, particularly one-legged blokes, they had a technique that they put these crutches, and they put little skis on their ends of their crutches and one ski on their leg, and it was called 3-track skiing, because when you went down the slope, you left 3 tracks, two for the little ones. And so he suggested I get these skis made, which I did. And then the next year I went down, and from then on it was, away you go. It was pretty good.
Wow, that's incredible. So he was from France, and he was at a youth hostel in Australia, and that's where you met him?
Yeah.
Okay. And so what was that like, going down the ski slope for the first time with your
I've got to admit that of all the sports that I participated in, skiing was the most thrilling.
Oh.
Yeah, because it always has been, and all the other sports, a lot of them were hard. Like canoeing was hard work. Yeah, but no, skiing was good. So I spent a lot of time skiing every year, and and then eventually bought a place down in the Mount Kosciuszko area, which I still have down there, and I skied up until I was 75 years of age, and
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that was the first time you went down there, you met the man from France, and then the second time you met your wife?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
And where was she from?
Sydney. Yeah, she's from Sydney. A place called Randwick, a suburb of Sydney. Yeah.
So you were both kind of on vacation for a week.
So we were there for a week. Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. Yeah.
Did you ski together?
Well, not really. I mean, when two-legged skiers and one-legged skiers don't ski together, they.
Oh, okay.
they do their own thing. Everyone's different. The technique and everything is different.
Okay, okay. But you would see each other in the evening at the hostel?
Of course.
So tell me what a hostel is like, and what year was that? Was that in the 50s?
In about 1952, 53, something like that. Yeah.
Okay, so tell me what a youth hostel is like in the 1950s.
Well, you went to Canberra, you paid about $14 a week, and that gave you skiing lessons, accommodation, and meals, 3 meals a day. And of course, what happens that you had to do all the housework there. You had to clean the place, and everyone was allocated a job to clean the place, and it was mostly young people, and it was a good. You were sort of isolated all together in that one hostel for a whole week, and so you certainly got to know everyone, and it was rather a pleasant time. Yeah.
And where were people traveling from?
Oh, mostly from Sydney. Yeah, Sydney, and some of them from. Not so much the skiing, but other youth hostels. They travel from all over the world, because there's the youth hostels all over Australia, the same as over in Europe, and I don't know whether in America, but I suppose there are there too.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And in the 1950s, when you were traveling there, did you meet any Americans?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
No. I met some Americans in the skiing business. One fellow who lives in San Francisco, and I've been visiting him over there, and he comes over here and he spends 6 months here and 6 months there, and I met him in the gymnastic field.
Okay.
But you meet a lot of people from all over the world in those youth hostels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, let's see. So you did skiing, and then did you do canoeing at this around the same time frame, or?
Yeah. Yes, that's right. I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
did you mostly compete in the 50s, or did you compete after?
In the 50s.
Okay.
Yeah, in the 50s. After the Olympics, I stopped in it for a year, but when you're married and got a small child, you got to earn money in those days.
Okay.
You had to be a true blue amateur.
Yeah. And so now, did you work? You worked as you drove a taxi, and then what other type of work did you do?
I worked for the YMCA for 10 years, YMCA, Young Men's Christian Association. And then I worked for the Police Citizens Boys Clubs for 19 years. And then I had my own business equipping our gymnasiums and retractable seating and all that sort of stuff in gymnasiums. Yeah.
So what did you do in the was it the YMCA and the
well, the YMCA, I was the physical director there, which meant that I conducted all the physical activities and gymnastics and judo and all that sort of basketball and all that sort of stuff. And in the police boys clubs, all I did was run gymnastic clinics and run gymnastic competitions and things like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any memories or any events that happened while you were working there?
No. Just as it was there's two type of jobs that you get. One, you get paid well, but you hate it. And other jobs that you get paid poorly, but you love it, And in my case, the jobs that I've had were most enjoyable, Doing physical things. And when you were as a young bloke, those sort of things never entered your mind. The last thing you ever thought would ever happen.
Yeah. And so, how many children do you have?
3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
2 boys and a girl. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so do you think it How do you think they felt growing up with a father that was in the Olympics and?
I'm sure they were quite proud of the fact. Yeah, I doubt whether they'd been anything but proud of the fact. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because I mean, not too many blokes on crutches achieve those sort of things. Yeah, I mean, people in those days underestimated you. I mean, one of the things I tell frequently, not frequently, but when I get the chance, that where I was working for the Police Boys Club, there was a squash court, and I started to practice hitting the squash ball, and I've been quite very good at that. And then I entered a competition, a team competition, and it was amazing that how you could suck these competitors in, because when you walked onto the court with one crutch and a racket, and they look at you and they think, oh, well, knock this old bloke over. and so what you did, you sucked them in, because when you did the warm-up, you made sure that you didn't hit the ball very well. And so you hit the ball so that it was terrible. And they looked at you and they thought, who's this old bloke? And then as soon as the game started, of course, you played your very best. And, of course, before long, you're walking out the court, the winner, and they're walking out the court dejected.
Oh, that's good. That's funny.
It was quite pleasant, actually.
Yeah.
So the other thing that what I say is that you should never underestimate anyone.
Yeah.
Regardless of who or what they are, never underestimate them, because you never want to know what they can achieve.
Yeah. So have you, when you were working at the YMCA or the boys club, did you meet children or other people who had a disability?
No, a few, not very many. Not very many. No, not very many.
And the few that you met, do you think that they looked up to you and kind of aspired to be like you, or to?
I don't know. I think a lot of the people that I used to teach, it's quite frequent if I go into the shopping complexes or in the eastern suburbs where I live now, and I used to teach also PE at Marsland College for a few years there as well. And a lot of those students tap me on the shoulder. In fact, only a couple of days ago, a fellow sent me an email saying that there was some reunion on with these young blokes that I used to be involved with, So, but no, a lot of the number of people. It's amazing how they still say hello to me. So
Even now, or?
Yeah. After all these years,
And they must be how old?
In their 60s now, I suppose. Yeah, in their early 60s, around the 60 mark, Yeah.
Yeah, and they're still remembering you as a mentor.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how do you think things have changed since the 1920s, as far as just how society kind of makes things more accessible for people that have a disability?
Everything's so much more accessible for disabled people nowadays. Like even getting on a bus now, they have or on a tram, or there's pathways and everything goes down. I mean, there's disabled people now get so much help now. I mean, compared to my day, you got nothing. You got nothing. But nowadays, I mean, we live in paradise. I mean, because of all the help that disabled people get, and they still complain though.
Well, I see that, you kind of help to pave the way and show people what is possible for someone who has had a disability, and to do everything that you've done.
There was nothing. There was no, in my childhood, there was nothing for you. You got nothing,
Yeah.
And of course, when you look back at it, in my childhood, it was in the Depression years, which
Right.
in America, all over the world, I mean, everyone was suffering, and
Right.
there was no gifts in those days. I mean,
Yeah.
you had to work for it. But looking back on my life, I've had a very successful life, physically and financially, and all the rest of it, and good family. Can't complain about anything, so I'm quite happy.
Yeah.
At my age, I mean, that's how
Yeah.
it goes.
Yeah.
And but I participated in a lot of sports, and from gymnastics, canoeing, skiing, squash, all those things, and
Yeah.
But what I competed not as a disabled person, but as a person same as them. I took
Yeah.
there was no what do we say bonus points if you were disabled.
Yeah.
But today there's so much sport and things for disabled people, and it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Yeah. 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 Well, is there anything else, any other parts of your story that you want to share? Anything else that we didn't mention?
No, not really. I mean, as I tell everyone, anything that's worthwhile can't come easy, and without toil, fuel triumph.
Yeah.
So that's the way it is. But there's a lot of little things, but but the main thing is that making the Olympics, which is and then getting the Order of Australia medal for my achievements, and all the different awards, life membership to the Gymnastics Association, all these sort of things were bonuses that you never dreamed of when you're an 18-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but you only got to look back at your own life, and I'm sure there's a lot of things that you never thought you'd be doing today.
Yeah.
Back there when you were a teenager.
Yeah. Well, I never thought I'd be have a podcast and be talking to you. So.
Yeah, that's right. That's
so
right.
this is a highlight. Right. This is a highlight right here.
Yeah. But there's a lot of little things that that you could talk about. But
Yeah.
But
well, good.
That's yeah. Anyway, it's been nice talking to you.
It's been very nice talking to you as well. Thank you for sharing your story with me.
It's amazing how here I am sitting here, you're over in America, thousands of miles away, and we're saying hello to one another face to face. Yeah.
It is amazing. It is amazing. And it's a Sunday morning for you and a Saturday night for me.
That's right. That's what you're ready to go out, are you?
Oh no, I'm getting ready to go to bed. I go to bed at 8.
What's the time now there?
It's 7:45.
Oh, it's only early yet.
Yeah, well, I start getting ready for bed at 8, and then I go to bed at 8:30. So but still, it's really incredible to sit down and across from you and hear your story. So thank you for sharing it with.
Okay, well, I hope I can told you everything clearly enough. But
yes,
yes,
absolutely.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'll get Matthew, and he can fix. Where are you, Matt?
I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm in the background.
Yeah. Is there anything else I should tell this lady?
I don't know. I went out and put the washing out for a little while, so I kind of can't tell you exactly what was said, but I'm sure you covered everything, as long as Carleena has everything that she needs.
Yeah, Matt, if you want to sit down, if Matt wants to sit down for a second, I'll talk to him for a couple minutes.
Okay, then I'll just move this out.
All right, that's all good. You stay here. Just a second.
Okay, bye for now.
Oh, bye for now. Thank you.
Hello again.
Hello.
Ooh. Whoa, deafness here. Just turning down the sound because that's better.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that went really well. And
yeah, I was sorry I stepped out for a while because it was going well, so I just did some housework around it. So
yeah,
yep.
yeah. So, I want to hear from you. I don't really have a question planned, but so what, from your perspective, you know, uh, you reached out to me because I have this podcast about the hero's journey, and you saw a connection between it and your dad's story. Um, so if you could just talk a little bit about that, like why you wanted to share his story or why you wanted to,
Well,
connect us.
I suppose because I also am a fan of Joseph Campbell, like yourself. The hero's journey is very, I think, very salient thing in our storytelling, and I'm a storyteller by trade. And I suppose I thought that he'd give you another angle as well. And also think it was opportune timing because I was setting up my podcast at the same time.
Yes.
So it kind of worked into that kind of connection. Was probably primarily that first, and then I thought, oh, well, if you need someone to talk to, he might have an interesting story for you from a different time, you could say.
Yeah, yeah. And so, what was your perspective growing up? As a child, what are some of the things that went through your mind when you were seeing your dad compete and against the odds, against despite having a disability? What what was it like for you as a child growing up, seeing that?
Well, I never saw him compete per se, and like anything, I think like every parent, every child, you look at your parent as that's normal, and so there's no, you don't go, oh, that's amazing, or that's, oh wow, because you don't have a perspective, anything different. That's your father, that's your mother, and I think there's only when you get older, you look back and go, yeah, that's pretty hard. That would have been difficult, and yeah, there's not many people like that. I suppose as a child, you were kind of always conscious that your father was different because people looked at him in the street and what's going on there. But that's probably the limit of it. And I think it's only as you get older you look back and think, yeah, that's a good story. That's a life well lived.
Yeah, yeah. Is there anything else that you want to share about your father, or just anything in general?
I suppose he's like every father. Sometimes it's really good. Sometimes he's really bad.
Yeah.
And also that also might kind of depend on the age that you are at the time. I have a teenager, and yep, it's kind of, I'm sure she loves me lots of times, but doesn't think so much of me a lot of the other times. So
Right. Yeah.
I think it's that kind of perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I really enjoyed talking to your dad and just hearing his story and hearing the different things that you remember, and having he's 91, and to have the memory he did of being 3 years old in the hospital. I mean, that's just incredible. I mean, it's incredible. That whole experience, I'm sure, was quite memorable. But yeah, it was really neat, just kind of like walking down the timeline with him and hearing the different events that he remembers, and kind of what he thinks of them now. It's really cool to hear.
Yeah.
My grandfather had polio. I think because my grandfather was in World War II and the Korean War, and I think he got polio when he came back. I'm not quite sure,
Really?
but he would have been about the same age as your father. He passed away, I think it was 10 years ago now, but that's one of the things that I wished I could have done when my grandfather was alive, was sit across from him and just ask him questions about his life, and so I sort of thought about him when I was talking to your dad. So I feel like that was a really special connection, just to ask him about life,
Yeah,
So.
and look, I can tell that he loved talking to you. So I think because that's a very important thing. As you get older, I think people everyone needs to want to live. I think you have to have a feeling that you have something that people want to hear, or something that's of interest. You're of interest to people. I think that's really important in life, and I think that's why he's lived so long. I think is partly because he was always brought up he had to be independent. There was no other options, and also the fact that that's keeping him involved in society. And so, talking to you is kind of like involvement in society. That people want to hear your story. So I think there's something that we should explore one day about, our telling our own story and how that keeps us alive.
Yeah, I like that. So, all right. Well, thank you for making this happen, and I look forward to keeping in touch.
Definitely.
Yeah,
we are podcasters in spirit, though separated by many, 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 many miles.
Yes, that's right. Well, good. Okay. All right.
Yeah.